All right. So thanks for coming on tonight. And thank you. I know there's quite a few people watching the recording now. So thank you for being here. So tonight's webinar is obviously run by me, Ophelia. Most of you will have found me via Instagram. So what we're going through tonight is we're going through the link between the gut, the immune system, and your fertility, and sort of how that all links into, how it all links together. So, all right, going to get started. And I put a little reminder there to press record because I wasn't sure I was going to remember. But so just a little bit about me. So I am Australian. I know there's a few Americans watching on the recording, but so I'm in Australia, in Victoria, on an island called Phillip Island, which you might know from the Grand Prix. We have a big motorbike race here every year. That's pretty famous. So about me, I used to be a teacher, and then I went through quite the fertility struggle. So I had lots of miscarriages, chemical pregnancies. Actually, I might just put that over on that side. Chemical pregnancies, lots of ectopic or two ectopic pregnancies, which means that I lost both of my tubes, which means that I had to do IVF. And so IVF has just become the way that I or the only way that I can conceive. So have been through quite the wild ride, you would say, and that whole journey just really taught me a lot about what we eat, the health of our body, and how important that is in like the preconception stage. And yeah, it really made me deep dive into all the things that I wasn't getting from my GP and my fertility specialists. So to have some very glamorous pictures of me to help share the journey. So I first, we first started conceiving, and we had a miscarriage quite early on. I then went through quite I look back now and realize that the journey that I went on was just so extreme. Like I really went over the top with my diet changes. But that was what got me my son. And now I realize that I didn't have to go as extreme as that. But that's sort of where the middle picture was. This was like maybe 2 weeks before I conceived, but I had really bad eczema, really bad gut issues, like just terrible gut issues that I didn't even realize really that I could fix them. I just thought it was part of how life was going to be. But through that journey, like you can see, my skin is really clear there, healed my eczema. My gut was infinitely better. I then had my son, Harry. And then after Harry, I had with this very glamorous picture here, I had my first ectopic pregnancy. And then in between that, I had a chemical pregnancy, and then the other ectopic pregnancy, which led to our IVF journey. This is my husband, Tim. It was right smack bang in the middle of COVID, hence the beautiful masks, even though we were just inside somewhere. And then, I've had, obviously through IVF, I've now had my second son, Levi. So I sort of like to start with this because I want to share that, I really understand what it's like to go through fertility struggles. And like I have a lot of women come who work with me, and they are scared. They're very emotional. It's a very, very trying and tricky time. And I can fully empathize with those going through that because, this has well and truly been my story. And there was certainly some very big ups and downs and lots of tears in specialist offices. So I really, really get it, what, infertility and IVF is like. So this webinar tonight is really for women who've been struggling to get pregnant and can't understand why. Perhaps they've, had some underlying gut issues that they've had throughout their life. And like me, it's just, you figure that, oh, well, that's just life. You've got to deal with it. Inflammation, immune issues, women with symptoms like bloating, skin issues, psoriasis, eczema, IBS, IBD. Also, women with like antibodies who've been told that there's nothing that we can do for you, which is just a total lie. I had a consult with a lady the other day who was told this in Australia, and Yeah, it's really disappointing because there's lots of research about how we can produce thyroid antibodies. And also for women who've been told just to go on prednisone because there's perhaps an immune issue, and really they haven't really been told what else they can do with how else to calm their immune system down. It's just, here's this steroid. So by the end of this, I really hope that you'll understand like a bit more about your body and why your body might be blocking pregnancy, what your symptoms might be telling you, and what steps you can take to help. So I want you to understand first, like I wanted to start with this because you might be thinking, well, what has the immune system got to do with pregnancy, right? But the immune system is involved in many, many functions in our body, but starting with ovulation, like it's an inflammatory event. So if we can see here, here's the ovary, our blood vessels coming in, and then we have our follicles, and our ovaries will decide which one that they want to develop for the month. One will grow bigger, bigger, bigger until it's nice and developed, and then it will erupt from from the follicle here. And if you can imagine, like anything erupting in your body, it's inflammatory, right? It's an inflammation event, which can, for some people, explain why, if they've got heavy inflammation in their body, why the time around ovulation they might get, say, example, more acne in their skin, or their eczema flares, or anxiety flares around ovulation, because it's an inflammatory event. So any sort of inflammation that's there in the body already will become heightened around ovulation because inherently it's an inflammatory event. And, pregnancy itself is immune mediated. So we have like our whole immune system works with pregnancy. So you can see here's, an embryo that's nestling into the uterine wall. All of the immune system is working there. So anytime something's nestling into, a wall in the body, it's going to create a little bit of inflammation. And if we are coming into that event, or, into conception, where our body is really, really inflamed, and our immune system is just on edge, then we have all of these immune cells in our uterus. And if it's already inflamed, it's going to, our immune system is just going to be on guard, and, it's not going to be a supportive environment for that, for the embryo. And we can see things like where the embryo is attacked by the immune system and it just doesn't allow the embryo to grow. So furthermore, like second trimester to, the immune system is in there, but it's more of an anti-inflammatory state. And then third trimester, in preparation for birth, it's more of a pro-inflammatory state because it's, that stretching of the mucous membranes and it's ready to exit through the birth canal. So the immune system is like, it's so important in part of, in the whole process. And it's something I feel like just doesn't get talked about enough, about how important it is to calm down inflammation so that our immune system can work effectively so that we can conceive and have a baby. So I sort of look at it in these three levels, right? And most people who have come to me have usually seen a fertility specialist, and they've been told really that they need this advanced protocol. They need IVF because we're not sure why you're not getting pregnant, right? But I sort of think, well, that's the top tier. There's many steps that we can do before we get to that top tier. And unless we have this level 1 foundation where our body feels safe, where we've got that reduction in inflammation, where our body, all of our systems in our body are working really well, our digestive system, our thyroid, our immune system, our reproductive system, unless they're working well, it's not pointless to be doing level 3, but we just don't have that foundation that, we would like to start with in that preconception stage. And it's the same with, if we go straight to supplements, well, we just don't have that safety, and we don't have, that reduction in inflammation, which creates that foundation. So that's sort of where I'm coming from tonight, in rather than, let's go straight to IVF, like let's calm the body. Let's, create that really foundational space for a conception to occur, and then obviously to keep as well. All right, so I'm just going to move this camera around a bit. I hope you don't mind. I don't get seasick from me moving it around. So There are lots of nutrients that are involved in the immune system, but these are like big the big guys, right? The three that are the big players. So we've got vitamin D, iron, and zinc. All three, which are really, really important, and three nutrients that I like is the first thing that I check in anyone that I see. There's obviously a lot of others, so things like iodine, selenium, vitamin A, like B vitamins. There's lots of things that are involved in the immune system, but if these three are out, we're going to have really big problems. So number one, vitamin D. Now in Australia, the blood test limits are, I think they say that they are, I think it's 60. Don't quote me, I could be wrong, but it's if you're above 60, then you're fine, right? But what we know is optimal is over 120. And that was the reference level that GPs also used to use about 20 years ago in Australia. But what happens with those optimal levels for blood tests is that's the average taken from the population in Australia. So as the nutrient level of people in Australia goes down, so does the average levels that the GP will use to then say whether you are, you're deficient or not. So we look at that as, or I look at that as, it needs to be over 120. Vitamin D is like your immune modulator. It's the thermostat. So if you have appropriate vitamin D, it can tell your immune system to ramp up when necessary, and it can tell it to ramp down if necessary. But if the thermostat isn't right, it's like being in a hot room where the heat is just on constantly. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's not regulating, it's too hot. And then it, recompensates, and oh my goodness, now it's blowing out freezing air. So we sort of need that thermostat to be able to modulate your immune system. And that's how vitamin D works in the body. Now, iron is obviously essential for many reasons. Obviously, not just for the immune system, and vitamin D too, not just for the immune system, but iron really helps us. There's sort of two dominances that you can have with your immune system. It can be a Th1 dominance or a Th2 dominance. And Th1 is more of that, like, okay, we ramp up, we go and sort out whatever the immune issue is. But Th2 dominance is more of that like chronic inflammation where you'd see in like eczema, asthma. And if iron isn't enough in our body will switch to Th2 dominance. Now, this is not something you have to fully understand, but what I want you to understand is that iron is essential. And if we don't have enough iron in our body, it switches the way that our immune system will work. So that's why iron metabolism is really, really important. Zinc, also super important. I mean, it's really important for hormones too. But zinc can also play a role, or quite a big role, in the immune system. And for those, I know I'd spoken a little bit about on Instagram about natural killer cells, and zinc plays a really big role in helping to decrease the activity of natural killer cells as well. But something I will say here is you might be thinking, oh, great, I'll just go out tomorrow and I'll go and buy vitamin D, iron, and zinc. But what I want you to understand is that it's not as simple as like, let's just supplement with these things, because the way that minerals work in the body is that they work together. So if we have zinc, like zinc works really well together, well, not works well together, its role in the body is to balance with copper. And so if we go out and we supplement really high in zinc, we can then put copper out. And it works like that with all of the nutrients. And zinc is one of those things that it's really, really helpful, but when used in the wrong context, it can be really unhelpful. So it's something that I say with caution, like, please don't just go out and supplement yourself. It requires nuance in how, we prescribe that within clinic. Okay, so the difference then between, I might just put this down. The difference then between like chronic inflammation and acute. So like we need the immune system, right? It's, as it says here, it's the body's defense mechanism. It's how it responds to injury, infection, and stress. So we need it. We need it every single day to be working properly. Acute inflammation, like you cut your finger and it heals. The immune system comes in and it will rush to the side of the cutting, and it will, activate and solve what it needs to solve. But this chronic inflammation is when it's low grade. It's this like long-term smoldering fire in the body that just keeps the immune system switched on, even when there's not really any immediate threat. So it's really important that we're sort of aware of this chronic inflammation, because if it's just, kept to keep smoldering away, it can really cause a lot of damage in our body. So it can be like a low-grade fever. It's this constant state of immune activation. So instead of it just being immune system on and off to deal with a certain infection, it is like it's on all the time, and it works the whole way around our body. It will drain nutrients really quickly. So you think about those key three nutrients that I've said: vitamin D, iron, and zinc. If our immune system is on all the time, that's why we can see, people who are constantly iron deficient, constantly zinc and vitamin D deficient, and just sort of can't get on top of that. It will increase oxidative stress, which if you've been in the fertility world, that's, the buzzword. We don't want oxidative stress. That ruins our, destroys egg quality, destroys sperm quality, all of the things. And then obviously, like if left to simmer for a long time, it's where we see cell damage. So we have, damage to our liver, ovaries, uterus, but also for thyroid as well. Okay. And then obviously, leading to organ damage. All right, I'm just going to open that up a little bit. There we go. All right. So now you don't need to understand all this, but I just wanted to show you of like the flow of what happens and how inflammation really starts in our body. So we know with modern lifestyle, like we're exposed to so many toxins. We're exposed, through our food, the pesticides, cleaning, you name it, like the clothes that we wear, everything is, toxins in our body. Most of the time, people who come to see me aren't making the greatest of nutrition choices, but then coupled with, say, our unhealthy lifestyle, like screen time, not sleeping very well, alcohol, sedentary lifestyle, working all the time. And then plus, we have the genetic and environmental factors as well. What happens then is it leads to this idea of dysbiosis. And particularly with the gut microbiome, it leads to an overgrowth of particular bacteria or microbes that are just really unhelpful and pathogenic, and if left untreated are very opportunistic and then grow, which can then, after a while we see this damage to things like our large intestine, our small intestine, our whole GI tract, and then obviously other organs in our body too. We then get this like activation of the immune system. We get something called lipopolysaccharides, which, are just very toxic, that circulate throughout our body because our body is just in this constant inflamed state. And then, if left untreated, it leads to things like higher blood pressure, abnormal blood glucose, liver dysfunction, and then we see things like insulin resistance. Now, most people who come to see me aren't necessarily in this chronic disease state, but they're somewhere around here where there's this dysbiosis, and perhaps they don't have a full disease state, but they're in this state of, okay, immune system is activated. I'm starting to get these gut issues. I've been trying for a baby for a while and it's just not happening. And, help, what to do next. All right. So again, going back to this chart of like, this is the flaws of the medical model, is that most of the time we're skipping straight to these advanced protocols and no one's putting out the fire of, the immune system and this chronic inflammation. So really we want to start here. We want to have that safety and that foundation before we do any sort of advanced protocols. So I wanted to tell you a story about a client that I've had who's been working with me for a little while now. Went to a fertility specialist, was like heavily being pushed into IVF and also surgery. They wanted to do surgery on her ovary. And she was like, no, I just don't really feel comfortable with that at the minute. Was quite young. So I just didn't feel like that was entirely necessary at this stage. Excuse me. Had recurrent miscarriages, so had been pregnant a few times but was losing the pregnancy, bloating all the time, had endometriosis. We suspect, she never had it checked, but we suspect that there was endometriosis, had very, very, very heavy periods. And after working with me, like her bloating's reduced, her energy's returned, her periods have normalized, and she's now pregnant, which is really, really exciting. And what we worked on was we changed her diet. We did very, very targeted supplements for what she needed, particularly around her digestive system. We really worked on her energy and her stress reduction, and just just the environmental factors too, of like, her work was particularly stressful, so we just workshopped ways of how can we reduce that. So a very exciting story with her. So I I wanted to show you this here as well, just to show you a little bit about the GI inflammation. And I wanted a picture of what happens with our guts. So this side here is, if you can see the cells there, they're joined nice and closely together. So these are our gut cells. And what happens is when we have, food particles, things in our guts, this should be really tight together so that nothing can come through. Okay, you can see they're joined together with something called gap junctions. But what can happen is, with things like long-term stress, toxins, food particles, different types of drugs, antibiotics, all things that we can take, different infections that we can be exposed to, this then starts to break apart. So the wall in our gut starts to break apart. Most people who come to see me, this is what is happening. So you might be thinking, oh, I don't think this is happening for me, but most people, like including myself, I have also been through multiple times where I know that this is happening. So what happens is the gut then comes apart, and we have toxins, and we have things that shouldn't be entering through past that gut wall. They start to go through. And then what happens is it starts to enter into the bloodstream. So things that shouldn't be in the bloodstream start to be in the bloodstream. And like, this can happen without you knowing it. Like, this is not, so you won't all of a sudden be like, something's in my bloodstream. Like, this is just happening in the background, right? But what we start to see then is you get your immune system, your immune cells are activated in your blood. We then have, because they're like, the blood is, detecting all these things that aren't normally there, that shouldn't be there. They're detecting that this is not something that's ordinarily is in the bloodstream. So it sends the immune system. Okay. So again, it's like that chronic inflammation where the immune system is turned on when it shouldn't be. So that's then we get this systemic inflammation and this poor health. So the four main roles of the gut here. So again, I wanted to show you what it should look like, what a leaky gut will look like, which is most people. And again, so we start to get food intolerances. It's when we start to get autoimmunity. So for those people with like autoimmune thyroid issues, like leaky gut is the first thing that we target, because you can have all the supplements you want to try and increase the function of your thyroid. But if your gut's still inflamed, there's going to be things entering your bloodstream, which is just going to keep that immune system turned on. It's going to keep it activated. So the four main roles of the gut: we want to break down and digest our nutrients. We want to absorb our nutrients. We want to also regulate the immune system in the gut, because 70 to 80% of our immune system lives in our gut. So if our gut isn't working properly, our immune system isn't going to work properly. And then our hormones, some of our hormones are produced in our gut as well. So if we're having this leaky gut and our gut's then not working as well as it should, those four main roles are going to be compromised, right? So if we're not breaking down and digesting our food, then our nutrients aren't going to be broken down. We can't then absorb the nutrients. So then key nutrients that we need for the immune system, key nutrients that we need for hormones, aren't created, or that process in the body is disrupted. We then get reduced egg quality. We get a hostile uterine environment because the immune system is not functioning well enough, because it can't absorb the nutrients that it needs. Our liver becomes compromised. It's where we start to see things like excess estrogen, because the liver can't then recycle the estrogen and send it out. And so estrogen just starts to be reabsorbed. The third main role, immune regulation. So obviously the immune system is in our gut. If this is leaky and inflamed, then our immune system is going to be on edge. Again, our uterus is going to be a hostile environment because we have a lot of our immune system in our uterus as well. Our immune cells are activated. It means that our whole uterus is just not a receptive place. Then obviously, fourth role of the gut for hormone production, well, we're going to have disrupted hormones there, and that has a whole cascade effect. So it leads to this like immune hypervigilance because these undigested proteins seen as threats, it leads to food sensitivities. So it's where like all of a sudden you're eating something and then you're reacting to it when you've never reacted to that before in your life. And it leads to this, whole systemic inflammation like brain fog, exhaustion, like lethargy, fatigue, rashes start to appear, you name it. So this is where we start to see these autoimmune responses, which I'll get to the thyroid in a minute. But we see, this is where we start to see particularly like chemical pregnancies when you may be getting pregnant, but then it doesn't progress any further, where the immune system is potentially could be, attacking the embryo in the uterus because it's just on high alert. So anything that comes into the uterus, it's like, quick, everybody attack, rather than it being a really supportive environment. So I wanted to show you, so this is just a diagram about the uterus, and like you can see that there's immune cells there. And that's why I feel really passionate about talking about the immune system, because the immune system's in our uterus, and it's a huge part of the process of conception. All right, so for thyroid, as I said earlier, we can't target and increase thyroid function unless we target the gut. And if there's dysbiosis in the gut, so, the overgrowth of bacteria or just, and a very sort of pathogenic dominant microbiome, we're going to have thyroid dysfunction. I've just got a moth. I love that. Okay. Oh, well, he's fine. I'll let him go unless he comes into my hair, and then you might hear me scream. Okay. So the gut, like you can't do anything, you can't heal the thyroid unless we're talking about the gut. Okay, what happens is we see if there's dysbiosis, we have, your butyric acid production is down, and that has a whole like catalyst effect on the gut. We get lipopolysaccharides secreted, sent all around the bloodstream, which just causes like chronic inflammation and immune chaos. Again, we have this immune system where we get this Th2 dominance activation, mineral absorption is down. And then it's, it goes back the other way in that, if we have issues with our thyroid, then we have issues with our gut. So it's sort of like, well, chicken and the egg, which one comes first? But it's really, really important that if we're talking about the thyroid and we're talking about antibodies, the gut must be the first conversation. And you can't lower antibodies unless you're talking about the gut and the role that the gut plays in this. So I have very specific nutrients that I use that help to support with thyroid and help to support if someone was testing positive to thyroid antibodies, which is really common, or more, maybe not really common. It's really common in the women that I see. That no one's actually checked what their thyroid's doing, and furthermore, no one's checked to see if there's any antibodies. And we know that the risk of miscarriage is much higher if there is the presence of antibodies. So like we have very specific nutrients that we use to help reduce that, but unless we're really talking about the gut, we're going in a back, we're going around in circles because we're just going to end up in the same place again. Excuse me. I might just have a sip of water. Sorry. All right. By the way, I can't see the chat. I don't know if anyone's saying anything in chat. I'm really sorry if you are. I'll have a look at the end. If you, while I'm speaking to you, if you have any questions, please write it down. I'm happy to go through that at the end. So another client example. So her name is not Sarah. I've called her Sarah just to protect her anonymity. So she's 33. Again, history of miscarriages. Been trying to conceive for 14 months. Severe bloating after meals, very painful periods, fatigue, like brain fog, emptying her bowels once a week, which if you've been following me for a while, like that's something that I talk a lot about how important it is to move the gut if you want any sort of hormone regulation. When we looked at her blood work, so CRP and ESR, both inflammation markers, both really high. Again, positive to thyroid antibodies, wasn't checked by her clinic, but something that I pushed for her to check. Was told by her clinic that her thyroid was fine. So her TSH was over 4. Now, what you'll get when you go to the GP and you ask for your thyroid tested, they'll test for TSH. But what happens is the level that they think is fine is very different to the level that is optimal. And the reason for that is they're looking for disease state, right? They're looking to see, do you have hypothyroidism? Do you have hyperthyroidism? And a TSH of 4 is none of those. But the research is very, very clear that a TSH over 2.5 is linked to recurrent miscarriages. It's linked to infertility. So even though she doesn't have hypothyroidism, the TSH was way higher than what we wanted. Like that, I really would prefer that to be under 2. Again, looking at those immune system nutrients, so vitamin D, 43, like I want that to be over 120. Ferritin, very low. She had a low iron as well. I think it was 10. And then something which I pushed for testing was high homocysteine, which, again, linked to miscarriages because of the way it can cause blood clotting. So something that's not often checked, but like a really, really important marker to check particularly if there's been that history of recurrent miscarriage. So again, similar to the previous client, severe bloating, had that told me that, at the end of the day, she's opening up the button of her pants. She's like, oh, I feel like I'm 5 months pregnant, but I'm not. That laying on the bed, just like, which, I can relate, have been there before. So constipation, as I said, emptying bowels once a week, itching skin, really high period pain. So was popping, Panadol, Nurofen every cycle. Heavy bleeding, and then obviously the brain fog. And, when I went through her diet, quite inflammatory, very high carbohydrate, a very typical Western diet, which I see lots of women coming to me with, like, 2 pieces of toast for breakfast, coffee, and then another coffee, and then not much for lunch, maybe a cracker with cheese. So like low veg, low protein, then, a few more coffees throughout the day. So zero judgment there. Like, I don't mind how people come, but it's something that, we work on, obviously, in trying to increase all of the things that are going to help her. I think particularly very frustrated because she was like, didn't want to do IVF. She knew that there were things going on, knew that the bloating wasn't great, was concerned, I think, about her iron metabolism and just how often her iron was low, concerned about bloating, and then obviously the health of the pregnancy. She was like, she said to me she didn't want, to inadvertently pass on some not great gut health to her baby. And then obviously just knew there was a better way than just ignoring and then going straight to IVF. And look, I do want to be clear in that, obviously, like, I've been through IVF. That's not something that I don't despise people going through IVF, but I think it's, as I said, it's one of those things where it's like, we've got to create the foundation first. And for most people, when we create that foundation, people can get pregnant naturally. And for some, it means that we go up the tiers and we have to then use IVF. But we've got to start with that foundation first. I'm not going to go through this in big detail, but I just wanted to show an example of a stool test of a client who obviously has given me permission to share this tonight. But we see things like stool color, semi-formed and tan, anytime we see tanned stool colors, we can see that there's some abnormal things going on, usually some fat malabsorption confirmed by the fat globules present in the stool sample. Look at things like, protein digestion. What are the how many short chain fatty acids, which is an indication of how well your gut is supported. So this was all fine, not too bad. Would probably like to see that a bit higher. This fat digestion we already knew, because she'd said that anytime she has any fatty foods, it'll just pass straight through her. So that wasn't a surprise. But then we saw on this side, where we go through like this opportunistic and dysbiotic bacteria, we found this positive of Klebsiella. Now, Klebsiella is one of those very opportunistic bacteria where it will, given the chance, it will replicate and then just cause chaos in the gut, which we sort of assumed there was something going on. But also the thing with gut bacteria is that it can translocate to the vaginal microbiome. And I think a lot of people are surprised to hear about that the vagina has a specific microbiome, and that what we have in our gut can also translocate there. So if we have dysbiosis in the gut, usually that's going to be in the vaginal microbiome too. We also have, we see things like the Citrobacter, which was positive, and the Streptococcus too. And, these are not things that we want to see. We sort of want to see all of that negative. But when we look at the beneficial bacteria, obviously great with the bifidobacteria. The lactobacilli, not as high. So we did, specific things like this client, and I use an ongoing client, so I'm still working with her on this one, but we're working to increase that because of the link between the lactobacillus dominance in, we want that to be dominant in the vagina because it's associated with a higher implantation and pregnancy rate. So yeah, so lots of things to work on here, not too crazy stool sample, but things to work on and things that made sense with, what she was saying with their symptoms. So like inflammation can come from lots of different places. It can be worsened through blood sugar dysregulation, lack of movement, stress, like nutrient deficiencies, obviously. One thing too that I think goes unspoken in the fertility conversation is like dentistry and your oral health. But if you think about like your digestive system as like a slippery slide, I should say, you're starting at your mouth and you're going all the way down. And what's in your mouth, if there's an infection in your mouth, it's going down to your gut, it's going down to your vaginal microbiome. So it matters. And I had a conversation with a client the other day where we've been trying to get to the bottom of where this certain infection has been going on. And I said to her, I was like, have you been to the dentist recently? Because she'd been busy, and I just thought, I wonder if she has. And she said, no, I haven't. And yeah, got back to me and she said, I'm so glad that you told me to do that because I have a completely rotten tooth. And, here she has been battling with things like chronic gut infections and thrush. And like, well, we've got to start there because that's the start. It's a slippery slide. It goes, what's infected in your mouth will then go down into your gut and into the vaginal microbiome too. So I hope this sort of helps you to understand how like your gut health, your immune function, and your fertility is all completely interconnected. And same with thyroid, like you can't optimize your thyroid without addressing your immune system or your gut health. It's just all completely related. And I guess it explains as well why this basic hormone testing that you get done when you go to an IVF clinic, why it misses the mark because we're not actually getting to that, the foundation, that framework of, why this is why you have a lot of these symptoms, or why you're not conceiving, or why you're having recurrent miscarriages in the first place. So yeah, look, I guess obviously I've had experience within the medical model. I don't really have a choice, and going forward when we decide to have another one again, like this is just what I have to do. But knowing that like it's 15-minute rushed consults, never once was there a conversation about what my gut health was doing and my health history. No interest really in other than very basic things, not really looking at any of my inflammation markers or the nutrients in my body. There was certainly no conversation about the food that I was eating. And, even when I tried to bring up about like the first time around about, oh, I have eczema, do you think that has anything to do with that? And they were like, no, don't be ridiculous, which, just isn't true. If there's inflammation in the body, it's going to play a role, right? So, most of the time there's this like reliance on medication versus the idea of healing and, prevention and working to create a really hospitable place for a conception to occur. So my philosophy is like I'm really big on we do deep dives into you, into what's going on for you, your health history. Like we investigate everything, like down to, when was the last time you went to the dentist? Everything from what you eat, what your gut health has been like as a child, how that's changed as a teenager, what's it like now, what was your period been like when you were younger, how's that changed? We do deep dives into nutritional deficiencies. We want it to be in the optimal range, not just, okay. And, it's a support beyond just supplements. So I don't, just have people come to me and then I give them a cookie cutter list of like, take these supplements. It's very, very specific into what's going on for that person. And, depending on who's coming to see me, but a lot of the time I'm doing things like very, very specific immune system support. Particularly for those who've had recurrent miscarriages as well, that, we get those nutritional deficiencies, but then we go a step further and we target the things that are actually the nutrients that are going to help calm the immune system down. And then obviously looking into diet, lifestyle, and, your environment that you're in as well. So this is sort of the process for those people who've not really been to see someone like me before. So we start with initial consult. We make, do that deep dive. We then, first of all, will make some changes to the diet, add in foods that are supportive. I always make sure it's food that people like. Like I don't just say, go and eat sardines. Like if you don't like sardines, don't eat sardines. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not a cookie cutter thing. Like I work with what you like and what's going to work for you. Usually I send people off for blood tests to, their GP and say, we put a little order in of what we'd like. Look for things like inflammation markers, the nutrients, pretty comprehensive hormone testing for your cycle. Then if needed, we'll go and do things like the more advanced testing. So we might do the hair test mineral analysis, depending on who it is and what's they've been going on. Like, do we do gut testing? That's a conversation we have. For some people, it's more SIBO. Like I think that there's an overgrowth in their small intestine. So we do the SIBO testing. For some people, we go deep dive into the vaginal microbiome as well. Then, if needed, we'll have supplements, but again, not a cookie cutter approach. It's evidence-based from the blood tests, your symptoms, from the HCMA or from the gut tests. Like I like supplements, but I don't like to overdo them. And we use them when necessary. And then, we retest and we tweak. And, we sometimes retest again. We'll make more diet changes as we go. Yeah, so that's sort of the process of how it works with me. So I guess, I wanted to ask the question of like, are you where you want to be right now? Like most people who come to see me, they are frustrated with the medical model, like just don't feel like they're being listened to. They're confused about their body. They have anger about their body of like, oh, it's just not working, how I want it to. They're working with their partner to save thousands to spend on IVF, hoping that it will be the fix. Most people have been, trying for 6 months, a year, 2 years sometimes, and have just been told by the doctors like, oh, just keep trying, or we're not really sure what's going on. And I guess the question that I would ask is, how much longer are you willing to stay, exactly where you are? And, are you getting the answers that you need from your current care providers? And I know that, everyone who's coming to me is just saying the same thing of just, it's not happening. They're not really being told why, what's going on in their body, or not given the time of day really to go through that. So I wanted to go through my offers. How I work is a little bit different to other practitioners. So I offer packages, and the reason for that is because true healing isn't solved in one consult. The people that I want to work with, I want them to commit to at least 3 months of change, and that doesn't happen from a once-off consult. And I really feel strongly about that, if you've been trying for a really long time, there's obviously some underlying things going on, and it's not fixed by one supplement. It's not fixed by one consult. So I'll start with my highest offers and go down, my most comprehensive offers, and then work my way through. So the first one is the no stone unturned. So this is like for the people who are just sick to death of not getting answers, and they just want to go gung-ho, like do everything, no stone unturned. So we do the gut test with cobiome, a very, very comprehensive gut test. We have the vaginal microbiome test, and we do a hair test mineral analysis test. So this is for the people who want the like full comprehensive, like throw everything at this, let's work out what's going on. Included in that is then the initial deep dive consultation, which usually goes for an hour, hour and a half. We then have 3 follow-up appointments over the next 3 months. And with that, I give you a nutritional plan that's tweaked exactly for your needs and your tastes. And included in that, obviously, is the blood test analysis of all the functional testing. And in this offer, I offer 3 months of direct messaging. So that means I set up a chat between you and me that I answer between Monday and Friday. So if you have any questions, or you're coming from a specialist appointment and you've just, found out some news and you want to share it with me, it means that we can tweak what we're doing, on the spot. You don't have to wait 2 weeks for an appointment. We tweak what we're doing. So people will sometimes who've chosen, this style of package, they'll text me their blood test results if they're starting IVF, and we go from there. We ask or we change things and tweak depending on real-time results. So, I feel like this 3-month messaging is incredibly useful and important because it's where people get the most help, whether it's from the emotional side of the roller coaster of IVF, in just being that support person for for the women that I work with, emotionally calming the anxiety around different things, helping them keep focused. They can message me and be like, oh, I just don't want to eat. I'm feeling really unmotivated. I don't really want to eat. And we just work through that and we come up with solutions of, all right, what are we going to do? How can we do that? That also has the access to recipe books. You sort of just get everything. I just send it all. And my hormonal harmony resources, which is over 100 pages of just things to help out. So that one is $1,940. And obviously payment plans available. And I should say, for the Americans watching, this is all in Australian dollars, obviously not in US dollars as well. Okay, so, oops, too far. All right, so my next offer is the optimized one. So this doesn't include the functional testing. So this is for people who maybe want to be a little bit more choosy about what functional testing they do. So instead of just doing all of it. So this includes all the same things: the initial deep dive, the 3 follow-up appointments, the nutritional plan, the blood test analysis, the 3 months messaging still. But it just means that if you wanted to do a functional test, it's on top of that. So it means that if it's a HPMA, you're paying for that on top of that. So that one is $750 for the 3 months. And for the 4 appointments as well. And again, payment plans available. And depending on how people want to do that, some people have just paid, $250 per month. Some people have more wanted to do a weekly payment. I'm sort of I don't really mind how people set that up. It doesn't really worry me how that works. And then the last offer. So this is the same, but it just doesn't include the 3 months text messaging. So this means that if you've got a question, you wait for the appointment, which, suits some people fine. So we again do the deep dive, the 3 follow-up appointments. They still get the same nutritional plan. If you want to do the functional testing, it's obviously on top of that as well. But you get the blood test analysis, and then any sort of functional testing is just on top of that as well. So that one's $550. And again, that's for the 3 months, and a payment plan is also available. But I have a little special offer of I don't ever reduce my prices, but I decided I was going to do it for tonight. So I'm offering 5% off for 24 hours only. So it's going to last until 8:30 tomorrow evening. So obviously that reduces the price a little bit. But yeah, I'm only going to offer that for 1 day only. But that comes to the end of tonight and everything that I wanted to go through. But I might just open up and see that there's some chat in there. Maybe I'll stop sharing my screen and then I can open up the chat. That might be easier. All right. Are those tests available worldwide in Europe? So great question. So the test that I should have said that. So that one with the no stone unturned, that's really only for my Australian clients. I don't offer that for anyone else because of like I can't organize a stool sample from someone in Europe. But the way around that is we just work around, like I just work out companies that we can use in Europe, but it would just be, you wouldn't have that specific offer. And then you said you went extreme with your own diet. Okay, so I don't recommend this. I really don't recommend this. So I followed this eczema diet and I was pretty much eating like 5 foods. I was eating chicken, potato, Brussels sprouts, chia seeds, and oats. So, and also oat milk. And it completely cleared up my eczema, but like long term, that is going to do so much damage. And if I'd stayed on that any longer than 3 months, I would have seen it would have caused greater issues down the road. So I do think that we want to make diet changes, but having 5 foods, no, I don't suggest that for anyone at all. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. But I don't know, does anyone have any other questions? Anything that they'd like to go through? You can either write in the chat or just turn your mic on. I don't really mind. Oh, what's your take on probiotics? Okay, great question. Love them if used in the right place. So okay, so I'm going to draw you a picture. Hopefully you can see this. All right. Let's just say this is your gut, okay? And we've got, actually, no, you aren't going to be able to see that. Never mind. Okay, let's say you've got your gut and you've got your microbiome and you've got your, little bacteria and things in there. But then, okay, so you put in some probiotics and you put them in it and it changes your gut microbiome. But if you keep putting in probiotics that you don't know if you actually need, what can happen is it can overpopulate your gut. So like what we want is a balance of all the different strains. We don't necessarily want, a dominance of, we don't necessarily, like, it depends on what the strain is, but sometimes the strains, if it's too much, it can cause other issues. So, I've heard of stories with practitioners who have told their clients, oh, go on this certain probiotic and forgot to tell them that, no, you do this for 6 weeks. But then they come back to see them, 12 months later, and they're like, oh no, I'm still getting that. I found it from, this person, I could get it online. And yeah, so they've changed their microbiome in not like by having it too much. And we want a balance. So yes, I love probiotics. It's something I use, but there is nuance in it. It's not something I would just recommend you just go and buy off the shelf. And this is why I really like gut testing, because how do you know what is in your gut and what bacteria you have there? I often we'll see people just going and randomly getting things off the shelf, but they end up spending, say, $60 per probiotic and do that for 6 months. And then they've all of a sudden, if you add up what they've spent $400 on probiotics and they've still got the same issue because it wasn't actually targeting what they needed, right? Okay, so 40 have had 2 miscarriages in the last year and 1 failed. I have lowered, oh, amazing. So from 60 to 30 through anti-inflammatory diet. Okay, ureaplasma in the vaginal microbiome, so I'm on antibiotics. Have no thoughts on, was that, sorry. I have no problem with my gut, really good stools every day. I understand you might not go into detail, but we're interested to perhaps add probiotics after, but I've heard what you're saying. Yeah. Yes, so I prefer to test, particularly if you are, 40 and you are doing IVF. I think why wait? Why do the, throw the spaghetti at the wall and then hope for the best? Like I really feel like particularly late 30s, early 40s, like let's get specific, let's test and go from there. I feel like you don't, not to, like, I'm not trying to put pressure or anything, but it's in, you don't want to like waste time with that. I don't think in just guessing. That would be my specific advice. But also, if there's ureaplasma in the vaginal microbiome, I'd be curious to know what's in your gut as well, because we know that there's that translocation from the gut bacteria to the vaginal microbiome too. What are your thoughts on the diet of the male? Oh, huge. I mean, I on my Instagram and on here I've talked about women, but it's 50-50. Absolutely 50-50. And um, there is I love it now because there's so much research coming out about the health of the male sperm and then how much that affects the health of the pregnancy. And they're now, the research now is showing that the diet and the health of the sperm is contributing to like things like preeclampsia, like lots of sort of conditions in pregnancy that it's not necessarily the fault isn't the right word, but it's not from the condition of the female in preconception. It's actually from the preconception health of the male. And, particularly with recurrent miscarriages, health of the sperm is huge. That's massive. And what I like about treating males with sperm health is it's quite easy to help sperm. I feel like it's a lot less complicated. There's some very, very specific nutrients that we use to help with sperm. So anyone here who's been in this preconception stage, if you're male, sorry, if your partner, if your partner isn't on a prenatal, please start. If you're in Australia, I wouldn't recommend the what's it called, the one with the blue and pink. It's escaped me. Does it start with an E? I'll think of it in about 10 seconds. It's the one that all the GPs recommend. No, not Eagle. I like Eagle. Eagle's a great brand. Elevate. Thank you. Don't necessarily recommend that. I would be looking for, there's a NaturBest Men, if you can get your hands on that. If you can't and you'd like to get it through me, just shout out. I'm more than happy to do that without a consult for a prenatal. But yeah, diet for the male partner, huge and not talked about enough. And I think they're saying now that with recurrent miscarriages that it's 50-50, like dependent on sperm as well. Yeah, I have thought about doing a sperm masterclass one day, but yeah, it's only so many you can fit in. Yeah. Anyway, that's okay. Anyone got any other questions? Otherwise, I'll wrap up because it's been an hour, and if you're in Australia, it's bedtime. That's okay. All right. I think my partner has leaky gut. Could that? Yes. Okay. Same thing for a male. If they've got leaky gut, they're going to have all of those things circulating in their bloodstream. Their immune system is going to be activated. The immune system plays a huge role in sperm health, let alone the nutrients needed to create sperm. Like zinc is so big for testosterone. So if your immune system is constantly activated, it's going to be using up the zinc. Zinc is needed for sperm and for testosterone. So absolutely, yeah. And also I should put it out there. I see males too. I see more women, but I certainly have male clients who have come to see me in this preconception stage as well. So definitely open to seeing male clients. All right, I might leave it there. I'm going to turn the recording off. Actually, no, if I end that, I think it's going to end the whole thing. Oh no, there we go.